This is Amazon's fulfillment facility in Columbus, Ohio. Every day, millions of dollars worth of products flow through the center to arrive at your doorstep. There are around 200 such facilities in the United States alone, along with 60 sorting centers, 250 delivery stations, and a 50 Amazon Prime hubs spread all over the United States to give Americans the best of class yet differentiated experience. Similar fulfillment centers are all around the world, from Singapore to the United States to Europe to India, packing and sending millions of products to customers. One thing they have in common, though, is that most of these products originate from China. People often underestimate the skill of China's dominance over Amazon's online marketplace. Since 2018, trade war rhetoric has taken over public discourse, prompting us to believe in a declining trend for trade between China and the United States. But when you look into the numbers, it couldn't be further from truth. Between 2015 to 2021, in a short span of 6 years, sellers from China dominated the Amazon marketplace, outcompeting and outnumbering their US counterparts. 2021 was a key moment in the process. Sellers from China accounted for over 49% of total sellers on the platform, surpassing the United States sellers for the first time. What's even more alarming is that the process is accelerating. In the first quarter of 2021, over 75% of new sellers on Amazon are based in China. Chinese sellers now represent 63% of Amazon Marketplace sellers in the United States. The number is higher elsewhere. So what is really driving the huge uptick? The more I look into the topic, the clearer is the divide between rhetoric and reality. Regardless of the geopolitical tensions, Amazon is doing the opposite, recruiting more Chinese sellers, not less. But why would Amazon do that? Does it not know that this is potentially problematic for its business? What about those fake review problems? To understand why the Chinese sellers now dominate Amazon's marketplace, the first thing we must do is to understand the industry. Back in the 80s, China was poor. It had just come out of the decades of turmoil and suffering. Deng Xiaoping, the leader who advocated for reform and opening up, had just taken over. To leaders in his generation, decades of communist revolution had not produced the utopia they had visioned for China, and it's time to chart a new course. Deng's student years in France had made an impression on him. While other leaders in China wanted a moderate course towards the reform and opening up, Deng wanted a complete overhaul of the system, to accept as many US factories as possible and allow Chinese workers to learn. But hey Lei, wait a second. I thought we're talking about Amazon today. Why are you giving us a lecture on China's history? Well, here's the point. Circumstances shape choices, and to the Chinese businessmen in the 80s and 90s, global demand for cheaper commodities dictated what China should and must produce. Whatever American and European consumers wanted, Chinese factories produced. With the lack of capital, the Chinese launched themselves into a labor-intensive model, beginning their decades of manufacturing apparels, toys, and electronic devices. It also happens that countries like Japan and Singapore are moving up the value chain, so naturally, lower-paying factory jobs went to China. Gradually, workers learned to be engineers learned to be managers, and managers eventually built their own factories and became owners. If you look at the developed world, America, Japan, Germany, France, and so on, the transition from light industries to making heavy machineries, cars, and tanks took 200 years, but China had to do it in 2 decades. By 2020, China's manufacturing output has become the combined output of the United States, Japan, and Germany. It is truly the world factory. Okay, I get it, Lei. China is good at manufacturing. That's not news. What does it have to do with Amazon? It turns out, if we compare China's export data today with Amazon's product catalogs, Chinese manufacturers dominated popular product categories on Amazon: electronics and electrical devices, apparels and accessories, toys and furnitures. all of these are sectors in which China wields tremendous power. In a research done by The Atlantic in 2011, China produces over 90% of PCs, 70% of smartphones, 80% of energy-saving lamps, and 80% of air conditioners. The list goes on. Because of this, Amazon had no choice but to kowtow to the made in China products. As I said, 90% of all phones are made in China. If Amazon said no, these sellers would be devastated and some would go bankrupt, but in a bid to survive, some would go to Amazon's competitors like Shopify, which would be even worse news. Further, Chinese manufacturer dominates these product categories, not simply because of their production advantage, but also for the competitive Chinese e-commerce scene. Because of the country's backwardness in the 80s, when the internet came along, Chinese consumers leapfrogged the brick-and-mortar model to adopt online stores in the early 2000s. By 2020, total online sales in China had reached 50% of total retail sales. For your perspective, the same metric is at 28.9% for South Korea, 15% for the United States, and 12.8% for the EU. According to UN data, Alibaba's total sales were $1.1 trillion, over twice the amount of Amazon. The other Chinese e-commerce giant also topped the list with impressive GMV results. Because of this highly competitive and developed Chinese e-commerce market, many competent sellers are looking for an alternative, and Amazon became the natural target. It has great profit potentials, not as cutthroat in terms of competition, and has the highest market penetration rate in the United States. On the other side, Amazon also loves direct manufacturer stores on their platform as it means lower prices for their customers. Win-win situation on both sides. This led to Amazon's push to attract more Chinese sellers in 2017, which resulted in today's Amazon landscape. But when the Chinese sellers came, so did the problems: fake reviews and counterfeit products. To be clear, this is not a new problem for e-commerce websites. When you have third-party sellers, they will take advantage of the system, and inevitably, a small percentage is corrupted. But this problem had become particularly pointed for Amazon, and it had to react by closing stores that violate these rules. One of them has sales of over $1 billion a year. But do I expect Amazon to be able to fully solve these problems? I don't. Amazon would never be an independent actor because it is profiting tremendously from third-party sellers from China. Over the last year, Amazon's GMV, the gross merchandise volume, increased by 63% from $300 billion to $490 billion, which consists of third-party sales and direct Amazon sales. But the bigger portion of that sales by far comes from third-party vendors, which is driven by the increasing Chinese sellers on the platform. Not only that, out of the $300 billion GMV by third-party sellers, Amazon makes 15% for seller fees, 10% for FBA, and 15% for advertisement. That's $120 billion revenue for Amazon, much bigger than what it makes with any other businesses. By allowing for more Chinese sellers, Amazon keeps prices low for its customers and makes more money. Hey, this is the end of the video. Thanks for watching. If you want to know more about Amazon and its businesses, be sure to check out my newsletter, Disrupted, in the link down below. There's an extended section for this Amazon analysis exclusively available on Disrupted, where I explain and break down Amazon's top 3 challenges in the coming years. I'll see you there.